Welcome to the Not Your Average Runner podcast. If you're a woman who is midlife and plus sized and you want to start running but don't know how or if it's even possible, you're in the right place. Using proven strategies and real life experience, certified running and life coach Jill Angie shares how you can learn to run in the body you have right now.
Hey Rebels! You are listening to episode number 27 of the Not Your Average Runner podcast. I'm your host, Jill Angie, and today we're going to dive into how you can know when you're ready for your first half marathon, or even if a half marathon is actually the right choice for you. So we're going to dig right in and really explore that topic. And then, of course, I'm going to share with you my latest obsession, which is free and easy and fun and will make you a better runner. So whether you are a brand new runner or an experienced pro, or maybe even just thinking about it because all your crazy friends are doing it, you are in the right place. Now, before we get into the meat of it this week, I had a question last week on Facebook in the Facebook group from someone that has been pretty active in the group, and I really thought I should share it with you guys. This person asked if it's even necessary to train for a half marathon to be a runner. And the reason she asked it is because I've been doing a lot of webinars in that group for the members to help them understand, what's included in half marathon training and what they need to be prepared for. And so I posted a link to the latest webinar that I was doing. And she said, am I even in the right group? Because I'm not really interested in half marathon training or even doing a race in general. I just want to go out there and run. And she kind of felt like she wasn't in the right place because everyone was talking about their races and they're talking about half marathons and marathons. And the answer is, of course, you don't have to do a race ever. You don't have to run a certain distance ever, or a certain speed or anything like that to be a runner. If you run, you are a runner. I know I've said it a million times before, but it really bears repeating. It doesn't matter how far, how fast, how often, whether you do a race or not. Everyone's running practice is completely different. And if doing a race doesn't interest you, don't do one. It's all good, I promise. You can still be an awesome rebel runner without any of that stuff. So I actually do know tons of runners that have no desire to race or to go farther than 3 or 4 miles. They just want to run. They just want to enjoy their time. And that's absolutely perfect. Now, if you do have that little whisper in your brain about half marathon training, we are going to dive deep today. And I also want to let you know that if you listen to this entire podcast and you realize that, maybe I am ready to start half marathon training, maybe this is the next step for me, I want you to make sure that you come to my next half marathon webinar. You can sign up for that at www.notyouraverage-runner.com/webinar-half-marathon. That's notyouraverage-runner.com/webinar-half-marathon. And that, I know that's a lot. It's kind of a mouthful to remember. So it is going to be in the show notes so that you can just go there and click on it. But I do these webinars pretty regularly. So even if you're listening to this a few weeks later from when the episode published, I promise there will be one coming up that you can sign up for. So just head over to that site, see when the next one is scheduled for, and go sign up. And I actually do have a funny story about the last webinar I did later in the podcast, but for now, just go sign up and trust me that you won't be sorry. Alrighty, it is time to talk about half marathons. Now, I'm sure most of you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say half marathon, but if you're listening right now and you're a little confused or you're curious, or maybe you're on a long car trip and you're bored and you've run out of other podcasts, a half marathon is literally half the distance of a full marathon, which is 26.2 miles. Well, duh, Jill, I could figure that out. But I mean, seriously, it's half of a marathon. It's 13.1 miles, and it's basically 10 miles longer than a 5K, which is 3.1 miles. Now, I do want to address something here. So if you're a new runner, or if you're not a runner and you're listening to this, a lot of people actually think that the word marathon is a synonym for race. And I can't tell you how many non-runners have asked me, hey, how was your 5K marathon last weekend? And I kind of crack up inside each time, because a 5K and a marathon are two completely different things. obviously. But I also know what they mean when they ask that question. And I'm always happy when people are interested and want to know how my running is going. So anyway, it is kind of funny how much inside lingo we runners have that we totally take for granted that everyone else is going to know, right? It's like we're in some sort of cult. Anyway, a half marathon is kind of exactly like a 5K, only you're just going to run an extra 10 miles to get to the finish line. So I want you to start thinking of it that way. And I know that sounds far, right? And actually it is kind of far, 13.1 miles. It probably takes you like, it takes at least 13 miles to drive it if you're on a highway. If you're like driving around town, 13 miles, maybe like 20, 30 minutes to get there. It'll take you longer to run it, obviously. But I promise that it's something that's totally possible for almost anyone. It's just a matter of doing the right kind of training, learning how to stick to your commitments, because I promise there will be plenty of days when you just don't feel like it and you're going to have to do it anyway. It's also a matter of keeping yourself properly fueled, figuring out how you're going to fit the training into your schedule, and then getting a self-care regimen in place that keeps your body in peak running form, right? So it's not really the distance that's all that hard. It's just making sure that you're supporting yourself along the way in all the different ways that you need to. So half marathon training does take a few months. If you don't approach it the right way, you actually will probably end up getting injured or, even worse, in my opinion, having a really shitty race day experience, right? Or if you start training for it before you're ready to start, the same thing is going to happen. So today we're going to talk about how to know when you're ready and then what you can expect during your training. Sound good? Okay. So how do you know when you're ready? Well, first of all, there's physical readiness and there's mental readiness. So we're going to start with the physical. And the baseline, you should have been running for at least 3 months and have done a 5K distance quite a few times during that period. Like at least 12 times, I say. And that doesn't mean you need to have done 12 5K races in 3 months, but that you've run 3 miles at least a dozen times in the past few months. Now, that might mean for the past month, you've been running 3 miles 3 times a week, or that you've done a 5K every weekend for the past 3 months. Like either way, I want you to have done that 3-mile distance at least a dozen times. And why I say that is because it means that your body has adapted to that 3-mile distance. And also that 3 miles needs to not feel super hard. Like when you go out for that 3-mile run, you're not saying to yourself at the beginning, gee, I wonder if I'm going to finish it this time, right? It's a no-brainer. It needs to be a distance that feels pretty comfortable to you. And I don't want you to start training for a half marathon until you get to that point. And I promise you'll get there, right? It's fine if you're not there yet. Just give yourself another month or 2 of training until it feels comfortable, and then you can start your half training. Now, I also don't mean that when you do that 5K distance that it's like easy peasy, prancing in the daisies kind of, simple, but that it's a distance and an effort level that you feel confident about. Because if you don't feel confident about a 5K distance, then that training for your half marathon, as you start building mileage, like every single time you go out for your next long run, you're going to have that conversation with yourself. I wonder if I can do it. I hope I can do it. I hope I don't fail, right? And so that's not the way we want to be starting our training runs. We want the training runs to be like, of course I can do this. I did 3 miles last week. I know I can do 3 miles again. 4 miles is going to be fine. And of course, finally, if you have any developing injuries, like if you're feeling some little twinges of plantar fasciitis, some sort of pain in your hips or knees, I did not mean to say nips, hips or knees, training for a half will aggravate that. So make sure that you've got your body sorted out before you increase your mileage. And that might mean going to physical therapy, going to a doctor, getting any like pain that's starting to ramp up, getting that diagnosed and taken care of before you increase your mileage. Because if something hurts at 3 miles, I promise it is going to hurt more at 6 miles. And that's only halfway the distance. So pushing through that pain is never a good idea. Go get that shit figured out before you make it worse. Okay, those are the 3 physical criteria. And they're important. Don't get me wrong. They're very, very important, but I feel like those are actually the easiest things to deal with. And the mental piece is really where it's at with half marathon training, because honestly, you can be physically more than ready and mentally not there at all. If your brain is not in the right space, training is not going to be a fun experience, and you might end up using the whole thing as a way to beat yourself up. Like that inner mean girl, she's going to have a field day with it. So here's the thing. If running 3 miles right now feels like an eternity, if you're bored, if you're miserable, if you're hating it the whole time, half marathon training is a terrible idea for you. And you might know this instinctively, but I swear there are people out there that are like, I hate running, but I should still do a half marathon because everyone else is doing it. Or because I said 20 years ago that it was something I wanted to do, right? Like if running that 3 miles feels really, really hard right now, and you're not interested in making it easier, or, you just loathe the idea of going 4 miles or 5 miles or 6 miles, like don't do a half marathon, right? You need to be enjoying that 3 mile run before you decide to jump in and triple the amount of time you're spending running. So again, if you're bored with that 45 minutes, 2 to 3 hours of that running is not going to be fun. And if you hate running, you want to do a half marathon because you think you have something to prove, just don't do that. Go figure out a different way to be a badass. Go do a sprint triathlon. Go, train for a century bike ride. Go do a ropes course. Go learn how to rock climb, right? Do not train for a half marathon. And, along those lines, signing up for a half just because all your friends are doing it and you don't want to be left out, but you're like, I really hate running for more than 45 minutes or an hour. Again, it's a recipe for disaster, right? You'll resent every step of that training. You'll probably hate your friends. Your friends will probably hate you if you're running together because they're going to be like, oh, Sally's no fun on our group runs because she bitches and moans the whole way. So just don't torture other people. Don't torture yourself. Do something different. Support your friends in a different way. Be that person that shows up for them at the finish line, makes the signs, brings them water on their training runs, or maybe goes out there and does a couple miles of the training run with them so you can be part of the experience and part of the support team, but you don't actually have to do the running yourself. You get the picture? Okay, so get your mind right before you sign up for the race because it's going to make all the difference. And here's how you get your mind right. You ask yourself why you want to do it, and then make sure that why, that reason for committing to this major thing is rock solid and that it makes you feel good, that it makes you feel excited, that it lights you up. Because if it's not something like that, those hours and hours of training are going to be like a weight around your neck, dragging you down. You're going to start resenting running. You're going to think, oh God, I have to run again. And you might get through that half marathon and then you might say, I'm going to hang out my running shoes because the half marathon ruined it for me, right? And I don't want that for you. So here are some examples of reasons that will get you through the training and across that finish line. Now, first of all, if you love running so much that you want to do it all the time, you just think about it when you're not doing it. And when your 3 mile run is over, you're sad. You're like, I wish that was longer. Not everybody says that, but really, if you can't wait to get out there and do it again, half marathon is a great idea for you because it's going to give you all the running you can possibly want. Now, you might be somebody who wants to see what you're capable of. And this isn't somebody who's got something to prove to the world, but I want you to be if you want to prove something to yourself, that's totally different. A half is a great challenge for the body and the mind. It's really more of a challenge for the mind, people. And you're going to be really proud of yourself when you're done. So if you want to see just what you can do, just what you've got inside you, and you're excited about the prospect of kind of pushing your limits, half marathon's a great idea. Now, if you're like, I'm going to train for a full marathon someday, a half marathon is the first step. So if the full marathon is on your bucket list and you're excited about the idea of that, train for a half marathon. It'll give you a real sense of what it's like to do long distance run training. Now, if you have, say you're somebody that's decided this is my year of yes, this is my year to commit to stepping outside my comfort zone to see if I can change my story about myself, or you can change your story about yourself. I change my own story all the time. So you're committed to saying I've believed I'm not a runner. I believe this is something that's going to be too hard for me. I don't want to tell that story anymore. So I'm committed to stepping outside my comfort zone this year or for the next 5 years or whatever to see what story I can write. Then a half marathon is also a great idea. And that's assuming that you love running or that you want to learn to love it. Now, if you love running and you've thought, I have marathon, that's not even on my radar, but all these people are talking about it and I want to see what all the fuss is about. I mean, sometimes we can't really imagine ourselves doing something because we just don't understand how awesome it is. And I mean, I can tell you, if you're a runner, finishing that half marathon is a real rush of confidence. So if you're curious about it and want to explore it a little bit, then, half marathon might actually be the right thing for you. And I have a really funny story for you. So recently I did a consultation with a new client about joining the Rebel Runner Unleashed program. And I'm going to talk about that program later on in this podcast. But right now, I just got to tell you her story. So she's been running for like maybe less than a year, I think, but she's going to turn 50 in December and decided last December that this is her year to do all the things. She's calling it her year of me. And, her kids are growing up, one's out of the house and one's about to graduate from high school. And she's like, I'm ready to prioritize myself over anything else right now. And so for the past 6-7 months, she has been pushing herself way out of her comfort zone. And, she's doing a sprint triathlon in August and, she's done some 5Ks and I think maybe even a 10K. And like she decided, all right, I'm going to come to this half marathon webinar because like I said, I've been posting them in the Facebook group a lot. And she decided to come to one of my half marathon webinars just to see what it was all about, like just that curiosity. And by the end of the webinar, she was thinking, this is interesting. It's probably not for me, but it's still interesting. But then I did another webinar and she came to that. She sat through the whole thing. And by the end of that one, she started imagining herself doing it. Like she thought, I could actually sign up and train. What half marathon would I do if I were going to do this thing? But she still wasn't convinced, but she had like opened her brain up to that possibility. And then she came to the webinar a third time, like for real, I'm not making this up. She went through the whole class. And by the end, she's like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm doing a half marathon this year, but as part of my year of me. So she signed up for a consult call with me and we talked about it. And like, she is going forward with this crazy thing. She's all in with Rebel Runner Unleashed. And she's going to do a half marathon in February of next year. So really, sometimes we just need to think about things and let it marinate for a while and just kind of, sort of chew it over. And then one day you're like, nope, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. So however you come to the decision to do a half marathon, it's all good. And some people know right away. And some people take a while to think about it. And they need to talk to other people and really decide whether it's a realistic choice for them or if it's something that they should totally avoid. So here are some things to think about when you're making your decision, because you might be mentally ready and you might be physically ready, but there are a few other things that I want you to kind of put in your pros and cons list. Now, if you love running, but you're like, I really hate running by myself. So if all your running is done with other people and you get super bored when you're running alone, and you're like, I don't have any running partners to do those long distance training runs with. Now, if you sign up for a half marathon, you're going to need to find some sort of community to help you out. And it might be joining a local Galloway training group, and they're all over the country. It might be, and this is one of my favorite ways to do it, recruiting different people to run parts of your long training runs with you. So your running buddies don't have to do an entire 10-mile training run, right? Like you can have somebody that starts out and does the first 2 miles with you, and then somebody who does the middle 2 miles with you, and somebody who does the last 2 miles with you. Okay? You don't necessarily need to have somebody with you the whole time, but if you can find people to like dip in, bring you a bottle of water, run a couple miles, keep you company, and then then they take off and you run a couple miles by yourself, that's a great way to keep it interesting. And then like sometimes if you do a training run with the same person and it's like 2.5 hours, like by the time you get to the end, you're like, I'm done talking to you. I have no interest in anything else you have to say. But if you line up 2 or 3 people to kind of dip in, you always have somebody with like fresh gossip and fresh discussion. And also they'll probably bring you water. So that's one way to do it. But you just need to think about that ahead of time. What's next? Well, if you think a half marathon is going to help you lose weight, and that's the only reason you're doing it, this, I'm sorry to say, you're probably going to be disappointed. I would say 90% of the people that say, oh, I'm going to train for this long race because it's going to burn so many calories, I'm going to lose all this weight, they gain weight, or if nothing else, they stay the same. And you'd think running all those miles, doing all that exercise would be sort of a jump start for weight loss. Like when you're doing a 5K training plan, yeah, it probably is, but the half marathon is just not how it works. So I have bad news for you. If the only reason you're doing a half marathon is because you want to lose weight, there are a lot of other ways to get exercise that can support your weight loss that don't involve you going out for 3-hour training runs. Let's see. If your reason for doing it is to make somebody else happy, this is never a good reason. It's never a good reason to do anything, really, because you're not responsible for anyone else's feelings. Just like nobody's responsible for your feelings, vice versa. There's nothing you can do that can make somebody else happy just by you doing it. They have to have a thought about it that like, oh, this person did this and I'm happy about it. But like you doing it isn't going to make somebody else happy. And here's the thing, it's going to make you miserable, right? So that's one thing I know for sure. If you're doing a half marathon just because somebody else wants you to do it so that they can feel good about you or about themselves, that's a recipe for disaster. So make sure if you're doing a half marathon, you're doing it for yourself. You're doing it for reasons that make sense to you. Now, if somebody else benefits from that, awesome. I love it. But if the only person benefiting from you doing a half marathon is somebody else, don't do it. You're going to be miserable the whole time. And you're going to be a shitty training partner. Now, if you legit don't have time to train, this is probably not a good choice for you. But I do want to tell you, most people actually do have the time to train. The problem is they either think they don't because they haven't done the math, right? They think, oh, I'm going to be running for like 20 hours a week, right? That's not true. So they think they don't because they haven't done the math or they haven't looked in their calendar. Or the real problem is they're just not willing to prioritize running over other things. So I want you to be realistic and tell yourself the truth, right? You're going to need to have 3 hours carved out every other weekend for at least the last 2 months of training. And that 3 hours includes, your warm up, your run, your cool down, taking care of yourself afterwards and so forth. So you might not be running the whole 3 hours, but you want to have that time saved up. If you legit do not have that time in your schedule, don't sign up for a half marathon. If you do have that time in the schedule, but the truth is you're just not willing to give it up to running instead of something else, the half marathon's just not for you. And that's fine. It's totally cool, okay? Just be honest with yourself. And then, along the line of honesty, just be brutally realistic about your whole current situation. Like if the race that you want to do is in a month and you've never gone more than 6 miles, just wait for the next race, okay? You can't fast track your training like you can cram for an exam. Don't underestimate the need for proper training and for a proper buildup of mileage. Half marathon training for a beginner is at least a 4-month process. If you're overweight as well, if you're plus size, the truth is, you're going to need every minute of that 4 months to get your body used to being on its feet for a few hours at a time. There's no reason you can't do a half marathon if you're overweight. You just need to make sure that your body's ready for it, because that weight makes it a little more difficult, right? That's just life. Doesn't mean anything is wrong or anything is bad about you. It just means that these are the facts and this is what you need to do to accommodate that. And you do need a solid training plan that eases you up in mileage, right? So if you're picking a training plan that's like got you running, 1 week you're doing 6 miles, 2 weeks later you're doing like 9 miles, and 2 weeks after that you're doing 12 miles, that's way too fast, right? Like maybe if you're an Olympic runner or you've been running for 20 years and you've done 1 million half marathons already, that's fine. But if you're a beginner, you want something that eases you in. So I promise too, if you just wing it, and I see this all the time. People are like, oh, I signed up for this half marathon. I didn't really train. I just kind of like went out one day. I ran 6 miles. It wasn't, the best run, but my race is in, 6 weeks. So I figured I'd just go out and do like 12 miles this weekend and I'll be fine. No, please don't do that, because you're going to get injured. You're not going to be properly prepared for the race. So if you're just kind of randomly running here and there with no systematic approach, your chance of failure is pretty likely. And it's just so much like if you're going to spend the money to sign up for a half marathon, right? and you want that experience to be great. You want, when you see that medal hanging on the wall, you want to be proud of it. Do the training. So get yourself a solid training plan for brand new beginners and follow that motherfucker like it's a Bible, okay? I can't believe I just said motherfucker and Bible in the same sentence. Good grief. Anyway, follow it like your life depends on it, right? Get a coach, get somebody, or somebody experienced that's done it before to help you when you're not sure what to do next, right? When you're like, I need to rearrange my training schedule. I'm not sure how I can move my long runs around. Your coach can help you with that. Or, join the Not Your Average Runner Facebook group. There's a lot of people in there that know what they're doing. So the bottom line is half marathon training, it takes time, it takes planning, it takes commitment, right? You need a support system around you, whether that's your family, your friends, your coach, your training group. You need a training plan, right? Just like we talked about in the Rebel Runner formula, you need something to follow, something that's like a system that's going to keep you moving forward at the right pace. So make sure you've got all that in place before you take the plunge to sign up for your first half, right? Okay, that was a lot. But to sum it all up, even though I just gave you a lot of reasons not to, if you're listening to this podcast, I know you love running and I know you're probably ready or pretty close to ready to start thinking about it. You might even be ready to pick one and start training. So here's the deal. If you're like, okay, Jill, I'm ready to do a half marathon. Where do I go from here? Pick a race, pick a training plan, and then go all in on doing it, right? Follow all the steps that I outlined for you in my half marathon webinar or that we're going to talk about in this podcast over the coming weeks. But before you sign up for anything, I want you to think about this. If you could guarantee your success by just doing one thing, would you do it? Like if you knew, if I just did this one thing, my success would be guaranteed, would you do it? If you knew there was something out there that could make it inevitable that you would not just finish your first half, but actually have fun the entire way, all the way from, picking the training plan through doing every training run right down to crossing that finish line. Like if you knew for sure, obviously you would do that thing, right? And I have that thing for you because that's just how I roll. Here's the deal. I'm taking 10 amazing women to New Orleans with me in February of next year. That's 2019 to run the Rock and Roll Half Marathon together. And these are women that are, they're beginners, right? These are not women that have a lot of experience running half marathons. Most of them, it's going to be their first race. And we're talking like run time, like anywhere from a 12-minute mile to like an 18-minute mile, right? So if that's you and you're like, first of all, you've always wanted to do the New Orleans Rock and Roll. You've always wanted to do it with people at your pace level and you want to do it right. You want to start and just really nail your training and know that you've got the support and the training plan and all the guidance to make sure that you get it done right the first time so you can really be proud of that medal and that whole experience. If you want to do that and you want to do it with me and 10 other beautiful women in New Orleans, then I want to talk to you about this, right? Because here's what's going to happen. I'm going to train all of you. We're starting this summer and we're going to work on every aspect of the Rebel Runner formula. We're going to get you in half marathon shape like you never imagined, right? We're going to get past all the excuses, all the fears, all the bullshit stories that you've told yourself all over the years that have been holding you back. All right. So I'm taking applications right now and all you have to do to start with is fill out the application and then we're going to talk for 10 minutes on the phone to figure out if this is a good fit for you. So you're going to go to talktojill.com. Easy peasy. You'll read a little bit more about this training program there. And if it sounds exciting, I want you to just go ahead, apply, fill out the questionnaire, look at my calendar to set up a time for us to talk. And then after we have our call, I'll let you know if you qualify and what the next steps are. So if, listen through today's episode again, maybe. And if a half marathon in New Orleans, I'm going to say that wrong. I'm going to just call it NOLA from now on. If a half marathon in NOLA, the Rock and Roll half, next February with some badass running buddies sounds like fun to you, set up some time for us to explore the possibilities together. Talktojill.com is the website. And just to let you know, I'm not going to be trying to sell you on this program on that call. It's really just a quick get to know each other, decide if we should talk further, decide if we should explore whether this Rebel Runner Unleashed program is right for you. So there's really no reason not to sign up for that 10-minute call if you think there's any reason you might be interested in doing a half marathon in New Orleans. The rock and roll half. There are beignets and beer at the finish line, or so I've heard. So anyway, and all right, here's a little secret I'm going to tell you. The women that do this half marathon together, like, I'm going to drive them. Not me personally. I'm going to hire a driver to bring them to the start line in a limousine. Like, you're going to show up in style. We're going to do this right. Okay. So go ahead, talktojill.com, sign up for a 10-minute call. Let's talk about it and see if this is the right thing for you. Okay. Real quick, I need to tell you about my latest obsession because, I always give you my latest obsession every week. And this time it's a free app that's going to give you strength training workouts right there on your phone that you can do at home with literally no equipment. And strength training is really important for runners. And it's one of the things that most of you guys ignore. I know, I can feel you on the line. You're thinking right now, I hate strength training. It takes too much time. I'd rather be running. I get it. These workouts in this app come in beginner, intermediate, and advanced. I've tested them all out, and I promise they don't require any special skill. Anyone can do them. And you can even do them while you're watching Netflix. They're 20 minutes long, including the warm up and the stretching. And the app is called Home Workouts, and it's available for both iPhone and Android. So go download it right now, because even if you do go to the gym regularly, there's going to be a day when you're traveling or when you don't have time to drive to and from the gym, you can't get there for some reason, and you need an alternative to keep yourself on your schedule. And so this app is super easy to use. Like I said, you can do it anywhere. It's called Home Workouts. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And I do want to thank my amazing boyfriend, Andy, for finding it and showing it to me, because this is super fun. He started running in January and he's been killing it, right? Within 2 months, he was already way faster than me. So now when we go out running, he kind of slows down so that we can run together. It's the cutest. He's just amazing. He just signed up for his first 5K in July, and it's a superhero 5K. We're going to do it together. It's going to be fun. So anyway, as he started running, he was running for a couple months, and then he thought I should probably be strength training as well. And he wanted to figure out a way to add it into his schedule so that it would be easy, so he'd have no excuses not to do it, so that he wouldn't have to be constantly going to the gym. So he found this app. He's been doing it like clockwork ever since, and he's really seeing some amazing results. So seriously, you guys, you should see how damn cute he is. I post pictures of him on my Instagram and Facebook sometimes. So if you want to see my cutie patootie boyfriend, go check it out. And he's probably listening to this right now, dying of embarrassment. Hi, Andy. Anyway, it's called Home Workouts. I'm not a rep for them or anything like that. I just think this app is really awesome. And strength training is something you're struggling with. And if you're one of my clients and you know who you are, I'm talking to you. If you're I forgot to do my strength training this week, or I didn't have time, just go get that app. It's fun. It's easy. You can watch Netflix while you're doing it, and get strong, people, because the strong runner is less likely to get injured. Okay, that is it for this week. Everything I mentioned in this episode can be found in the show notes at notyouraverage.com/27. And if you have decided that you are ready to get started with running, you've been listening for 27 fucking episodes, then you're okay, today's the day, right? Head over to notyouraverage.com/start and get your free jumpstart plan. That's it for this week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Not Your Average Runner podcast. If you liked what you heard and want more, head over to www.notyouraverage.com to download your free 1-week jumpstart plan and get started running today.